Hello, everybody, and welcome to Overturning Tables, the podcast where we take progressive theology from concept to practice. I am Reverend Jonathan Bradner.
I am Reverend Derek Terry.
Right. And how are you doing in the sense that we are now a few days into the new Trump regime? Besides like getting into like the new, like how are you existing right now?
I honestly feel guilty because I'm good.
Yeah.
And I feel guilty behind that, which is weird. But I also feel guilty, not necessarily just for being good. I feel guilty because I am purposely monitoring how much news I consume.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's important to know what's happening in the world, but I'm working really hard not to obsess, not to like spend hours and hours every day as part of my self-care. So I'm working really hard to be okay.
Valid.
Yeah. Not that easy, but how are you?
I am in my element. So like I don't like a lot of people probably listening or watching may not like follow my social media or whatever, but like I've been like going crazy on
Yeah, you love this.
I live for
these
these moments. Part of it is just like this deep sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Like whereas like now might be the time for yourself or somebody who's like very directly impacted by policies in harmful ways, that self-care is important. And it's important for everybody, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But now's not the time for me to go on vacation.
Right.
You know? And so and part of it's just my background, like where my degree is from and everything like that, that anytime something shakes the world, I tend to get analytical. And maybe that's not always the most healthy thing. But based off the responses I've been receiving, I hear a lot of, I wish I could have said that, or I could have.
Yeah.
Because I've been trying to do my best not to just directly attack, but like just to contextualize. On the same vein, though, I feel wary of that because part of the issue that we have in this movement is contextualization and over contextualizing and over analyzing. So I'm trying to do my best to find the middle ground.
And it's only been this recording 3 days, 2.5,
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
Like I have to always remind myself, but I also think it's really important, and that's that balance thing. Self-care is definitely important, but also action. One of my favorite Frederick Douglass quotes is, "I prayed for 20 years and saw no answer until I prayed with my feet." He's talking about his enslavement, and like there comes the task of actually doing the work.
Yeah,
and I think we all have work to do. It can seem overwhelming and daunting, and all of that. So I always think, okay, what am I for? What am I for right now? And how do I do that? And I keep talking to the church about that. Like, what are we for? And how do we do that? And how do we do that within our mental capacity, within our physical capacity, our financial capacity, our, what do you have in your house right now? And I'm really loving that. And I'm also really loving connecting with people to check in on them in a way that I feel like clergy have an in, where some people are like, oh, I don't know what to say. As a clergy person, it's really easy to say, hey, how are you? How do you feel it? What's going on? What about this? But, make it a little weird, because it's not weird. But
at least normalize it.
Yeah, it's normal, whereas people are like, oh, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, hey, I know you lost your job. How are you doing? Like, do you have food? Do you have this? Do you have that? And yeah, I've been really checking in on my trans and non-binary people.
Good. Yeah.
And imagine being like wrestling with that idea, like for the last couple of months or years, and then the highest office in the world says, no,
it's here now. Yeah.
You're not. Like, because that the president saying the United States only recognizes two genders doesn't erase gender not conforming, gender not binary, or trans people.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away their experience. It changes nothing.
The gap that I don't know how to bridge yet, and I've been working on this, and I just don't know what to do with it, is like, so like in that policy, we're specifically talking about the two gender policy. It's even like biologically inaccurate.
Yeah.
Because he uses the words like at conception, when like scientifically, that's not how sex works at all. Like
all girls,
we're all girls at conception.
That's why men have nipples.
And so
I literally touch my nipples if you're listening.
Right. That's why we have nipples, everybody. That's why everybody has nipples. Sorry for the person watching this that doesn't have nipples. I'm so sorry.
There's one.
But the nipples do not define you.
Not at all. I went to college with someone that anyway.
Go for it.
No.
Were you like, oh, maybe this is not my story to tell all of a sudden?
When I thought I was straight. It's the whole thing.
So the gap I don't know how to cross yet is those that can't even or have shown unwillingness to engage in substance. So for example, this very policy where it's just like, I can say from an intellectual level, like, your guy here isn't even like accurate on like this, but there's just like they don't care. And so it's like, what do we do? Like, how do we approach the conversation where it's clear that it doesn't matter to them that he ended the policy or the executive decision from Biden's administration to lower the cost of prescription drugs with no replacement and no plan. Like, that was part of my social media postings here these last couple of days, and the response from his supporters was blatant, like, just ignore it and not even engage with it. But they'll say like, he's my guy, or the country voted for him in a landslide. Nuff said, like, literally they used NUFF said, and it's just like, but this very specific post is about the cost of medication is about to go up directly because of this policy. And when I gave them multiple opportunities to engage with that, nothing. Just, I'm sticking by my guy.
Which is scary. I mean, like think about it. We're in a denomination where the church calls the pastor, and it's quite often that the search committee will make a recommendation, and the congregation or congregationalists vote, and it's pretty common for it to be, if not unanimous, pretty close to unanimous. But that doesn't mean that because the congregation said, all right, this is who we want to be our person, that each and everything that we say, that they're going to blindly support. Like, there's still a responsibility to hold leaders accountable, and for truth. And so, and that's the difference between democracy and authoritarian. Like, authoritarianism, they really want, we often think of authoritarian leaders as having this thumb that they press down on people and force them to support them. But there are people who eagerly support those type of people. And I argue one of the main reasons is people don't want to think. They don't want to watch. If I just put all my trust in this person, I just support everything that they say and do. I mean, this guy didn't even put his hand on the Bible. Like, to me, that's not a big deal.
Right.
But when you've ran this whole platform on these, I'm using air quotes if you're listening, Christian values, and how much he loves the Bible, and how much he loves democracy, to make that decision, that's very telling to me. It's
I think you're giving him too much credit. I don't think he made that decision.
Well, to not do it.
I think he forgot.
You think he forgot?
I literally think he forgot. The 2 Bibles were there. He had 2 Bibles. He had one that was gifted to him by, I guess, his mother, and a Lincoln Bible.
He had the Lincoln Bible.
There's 2 there. Melania was holding them both.
That's the Bible Lincoln used when he was inaugurated.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he just forgot.
Really? Yeah, I think he's...
Too much of his base is Christian nationalist for him to make the decision. Like, he would only be harming his base by choosing not to.
And see, I just wonder, like, if he's just like, like, freak the Bible, like, freak that. Like,
freak the
I is in charge, and I'm not doing that. Like, it's just weird to me.
I think that's giving him too much credit.
And that's, well, that's better than...
Yeah. But it also is still telling, and
it's very telling.
In the same way that obviously he's not leading with a moral compass.
Oh, he has none.
Because if I'm elected president, the Bible, I'm going to put my hand on the Bible. I'm going to put my hand on probably like the Torah. Like I'm going to, like every book of wisdom is going to be at the front of my mind when I'm being inaugurated.
A Trump Bible, then the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are in there too. So like, you use a Trump Bible.
Yeah. But I think it's just telling that in that space and time, the type of person who that's not on the forefront.
Oh, it's not. I love when someone asks him what his favorite Bible verse is. He says, "Oh, this is very personal."
Yeah,
it's very personal. It's like if he could name one Bible verse, I would be surprised.
Yeah, I think we talked about that like our first podcast. Like, dude couldn't even come up with like John 3:16.
There are 2. There's one verse with 2 words. The first word is Jesus. What's the second? It's very personal. Very personal. But he's made at least $100 million. Did you see that? Since he's been inaugurated. That Bitcoin. He has this whole like Trump Bitcoin. Because now with cryptocurrency, anyone can create it, which is weird, crazy to me. So he made these Trump coins or whatever available, kept the bulk of them, sold a bunch of them. And it's estimated he made about $100 million off of them.
Maybe he's a better businessman than we give him credit for.
It's unprecedented that a president is running this whole like corporation while it's just my dearly departed Aunt Hazel, whenever something went bad, and she was a Black Republican. That's a whole other, like a true Black Republican. Like she voted Republican because Lincoln was a Republican. She was old. She did vote for Obama before she passed, though. But whenever something would go really crazy, she would just say, "Oh, this country has gone to piss," and that's exactly what, like, cold piss is when it was real bad. And I was like, "This is what it is." I've worked really hard this week to have a positive inauguration day, MLK Day. Trying to figure out like what my balance is here, but I just keep going back to this. This country has just gone to piss, and 2 things that we can't do is give up, and the other is obey in advance. We can't obey in advance.
Oh, I like that.
On Tyranny. It's an amazing book. It's only like it's less than 100 pages if you're listening. I forgot his name, Snyder maybe wrote it. It's called On Tyranny. He gives 21. Like, hey, this is how you rebel against authoritarianism. The first one is don't obey in advance. Don't say, "Oh, I can't do this because this might happen."
Yeah,
it's like no, because that's what it wants you to do is to not. So then they don't have to, smack you. Like, you just don't do it anyway. So, I'm like, no, I'm going to preach this. I'm going to post this. I'm going to say this. I'm going to show up here. I'm going to stand up for our immigrant siblings and trans siblings and poor and unhoused. Not going to let it.
I also feel really activated right now, especially in light of Bishop Buddy's sermon. I feel like that was such a launching point for the inclusive church and reconciling congregations that she has opened the door to a moment where we can capture the movement and spread and expand and go. Like, go.
This is Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Christian pastor calling for mercy for God's children is not a political moment.
Right.
Like, I mean, it touches on some dirty politics that are taking place. But she literally spoke truth to power in a very humble, beautiful, look, I'm getting goosebumps now. Think about it. Powerful way. And that whole family sat there. It was like, we're not used to this.
Yeah.
This makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He comes back at midnight and tells her she needs to apologize. And then, so I need to apologize for asking for mercy for God's beloved children. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. But for many folks, I'm wondering if that's the first time they've ever heard a reverend speak that way on a national scale. And so that's why I feel like, and it's a moment that we need to capitalize on. Like talking to the UCC, like I already posted on their Facebook page, like now's the time for another media campaign.
Yeah.
If we drain every last penny the UCC has into another media campaign, it has to happen.
Absolutely.
If not that, then all of these denominations, Episcopalians, the ELCA, we all need to get together and combine resources for a media campaign.
Because there are people, and I know you get this all the time, who will say, I didn't know church like yours existed. I didn't know pastors like you existed.
Yep.
And like when you're in this, you're just like, how did you not know? But it's very easy not to know, because what is the narrative of the Christian church right now? I mean, there are people calling to tax churches. We've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People calling to tax churches because they think that all churches are Joel Osteen's church.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, your church is more affluent than my church. Our denomination has a reputation for being affluent as compared to some other churches, but that's very individual, not denomination collective. Get that. So people have this idea of, oh, they should pay all this money because they're, supporting Trump and what he's doing. And that's just not the case for thousands of churches.
Yeah.
I mean, we are outnumbered. We're in the conservative, compared to our conservative counterparts. But if people don't know, and God is Still Speaking was a huge media campaign for the church and brought, that's how I found UCC Church. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And media looks so different now. But to turn on the television and see that commercial of people getting ejected out of the church, where do people land? And people need our churches now more than ever. Church was packed on this past Sunday.
Was it?
And I think it's because we were going into this, it was the day before the election, or not election, day before inauguration, MLK Day. People were just looking for community. And I have people who would say, oh, I don't know how I feel about, my faith, or I don't know how I feel about religion or organized religion. And so I'm always telling people, you don't have to come, you don't have to sign on to any, I believe, any creed, just community. And people are really taking community and a positive message and cookies after service. Like, it's the simplest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about Bishop Buddy reminding us, and I literally just wrote an op-ed to the Inquirer about.
Good. I hope they publish it.
I hope so too. And literally the subtitle is reminding us of who we are, and recalling the ancient tradition of most religions of prophecy, and how deeply established it is to religion itself to speak truth to power. I mean, our Old Testament literally has books called there's literally books called Kings, and we literally have books about prophets who were direct advisors of kings, and books, like King David rings a bell to me, and not to mention how political just the life and death and birth of Jesus was, but even before that, the establishment of prophetic wisdom is deeply rooted in our tradition. And I would argue that if you are a minister who's not speaking prophetically, to pray about that.
Because we cannot let Jesus be stolen.
No.
But Jesus was a Palestinian Jew, a minority, who was lynched by the Roman majority, the power holders, the money holders. Like, that's fact. So we cannot allow billionaires to side with, to say Jesus is in our team in that story. This is not the case.
Yeah.
And we have to be bold enough to understand what that happens when Queen Esther, did her thing in the Bible. Said, if I perish, I perish. Like that, like there's a cost to that. Like, people not complain, but we get people, we've had pastors reach out to the coalition before and say, oh my God, the Proud Boys are doing this and saying this. And I'm very understanding. That's a scary thing. As someone whose church has been attacked, it's very scary. But also it's like, this is what happens.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point, is to scare you. And so know what that means, and know what you can do, and how you protect yourself, how you protect your family.
Right. Man, that could be a whole episode in of itself.
Hell yeah, I'm petrified.
We don't have enough pastors that are petrified, in terms of because they don't speak prophetically, they don't even know what it means. Like, they don't even know what it's like to receive a threat, or things like that.
Some people are afraid of people in their church, Matt.
Well, yeah. That's part of it, is just like the fact that they'll lose their job, their livelihood, which is why I say to every pastor, have a backup career.
Absolutely. And I remember when we were going through this in my church, my contract says, like, I have to get 3 months salary. So I was always like, I ain't got it. So it'll be a while. Even though, like, when people really want to do something, they'll figure out how to get it to do something. But and this is another conversation, but politically speaking, when you are navigating, if you're in a congregational church, there are ways to gear your church up for some of those conversations, and to get the people, I won't say on your side, but to get people in the congregation to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. And I think we should be uncomfortable sometimes in church. I'm uncomfortable a lot.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I preach something, oftentimes I'll preach something that I'm uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop me. I'm like, if this is what God is saying, if this is the moment, and I'll tell them, I'm uncomfortable preaching this.
I do too, yeah. I'm like, I'm scared right now, y'all. They know when I take the pulpit, because I normally don't preach from the pulpit, and so pretty much my tell anymore is if I go to the pulpit, everybody's just like, okay, hold the pews, everybody. He's coming. He's coming in hot.
Yeah, like, it's important. But Jeremiah wept. Like, Martin Luther King was constantly afraid, socially, politically, morally. I mean, he cheated on his wife, and the FBI was always threatening.
He was also a smoker.
He was a smoker. People are always threatening to out. It was sent. The media was different then. They were sending stuff to the media, talking about stuff that he was doing, and that weighed on him. His approval rating was terrible when he was killed.
Yeah.
He was hospitalized a lot for depression, for exhaustion, and he had mental health issues. Trigger warning. Attempts to take his own life when he was younger. Like, and I always tell this to people, not to like sensationalize King, but to humanize him. And his "I Have a Dream" speech was called "Normalcy Never Again." It wasn't this utopian idea of a dream. It was, the world is messed up. Let's fix it.
Yeah. Yep. People always, history does not remember why Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. It tells a version, but when you get into anti-militarism, poor people's campaign, breadbasket,
It was
standing against police brutality. Dude was a democratic socialist.
Yeah. There was Taylor Branch wrote these two books about America during the King years. One is called Pillars of Fire. One is called Parting the Waters. And he talks about the actual campaign that, because people always think of King as this preacher, which he was, and they always think of the civil rights movement as, the civil rights movement, but it was a political movement.
Yeah.
It was literally organized activism to change and to bring about certain ends. And Taylor Branch talks about how King was kicked out of his denomination. And I think we forget that. Like, there would be no progressive Baptist church.
NAACP kicked him out, right?
He and Roy Wilkins was over there. They did not get along. Because, you just got the egos of all these people. And he was much younger than people. And people thought that he had the faith. And a lot of people, when he spoke out against Johnson after the Civil Rights Act, after the Voting Rights Act, there were lots of black leaders who were pissed at him, because they're like, Johnson, this racist from Texas, has done all this to help us.
Yeah.
Why would you speak out against it? Now we know how the Vietnam War was, like how it ended. At that time, most of the country was on the side of, this is what we should do. This is a noble war. Mm-hmm. And King was one of the first people of that stature to speak out against it. He did it at a UCC church, Riverside Church in New York. It's one of my favorite King speeches just before he passed. It was in 1967. He died in 1968. So not just before, but it was, pretty close to
sure.
Like, and it's on YouTube. And wow, it is.
It's wild to listen to any of his leaders.
Yeah.
Because it feels like, I once went to a Vincent van Gogh exhibit, and his paintings, they had it arranged chronologically. And you can see how his paintings get darker and darker and darker. Mm-hmm. In the same way, if you pay attention chronologically to King's sermons, it just feels like he knows that it's coming.
Yeah.
That is assassinated. Like, it just feels like the urgency keeps coming up a little bit more and more and more.
I listened to that speech. It's called the Drum Major Instinct.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. And, some people call it the mountaintop, because it's a sermon he preached right before he died. And he talked about that a lot. Mm-hmm. Because he knew that it was an inevitability, like, credit that he would say, "Oh, this is what's going to happen to me." Mm-hmm. But that sermon, and Barber speaks on it a lot at that mass. In that same mountaintop, he's telling you, don't buy from stores that won't hire. Mm. He's telling us that. Mm. He's saying this country has gone to hell, basically. And I don't know if it's going to get any better.
Yeah.
And if it does, I'm not going to see it.
Well, there's that interview that's in color on YouTube. And the interviewer talks to him about his dream. Mm-hmm. And in that interview, this is maybe 2 or 3 years after he gave that speech, he's like, now I don't know about, like, now I'm weary of that dream. And it's like, and I remember when Stokely Carmichael, when King was killed, people interviewed him, and he said, "You all talk about America, you all messed up." He was the one trying to keep us nonviolent. He was the one
calling us to this higher calling. So now we don't believe in any of that because you know you've done this to this person, and it breaks my heart that Voting Rights Act has been gutted. It breaks my heart that we're seeing civil rights being attacked the way it is. This is not new. The Supreme Court has been sacked before. This is not new, where progress hasn't made and people try to drag us back. What to me is so interesting is how bold and brazen.
It's weird.
Yeah.
That's the only word I got for it. It's kind of weird to watch.
Yeah. Look, I mean, there were billionaires front row center for the inauguration. Like, Facebook changed. Like, TikTok changed. These are
the bending of the knee is so weird. Like, it's so weird. That's all I got.
And this is like not new, but the newness is how in our face it is. Like, usually this is stuff that's happening behind closed doors.
Right.
But like when the CEO of TikTok is coming to the inauguration and turns it off on purpose and then turns it back on and names Trump as the savior.
With that message that you have to see.
You have to see. That's just, like back in the day, people would try to hide that kind of stuff a little bit more. And now it's just like, no, it's right with him signing his name on the stimulus checks. That now the very tax cuts and stimulus that he says he was for, that's the very thing now using as the excuse for why we have to cut spending. It's not really.
Well, we've talked about a few all other things in this one.
The world has gone to piss.
The world has gone to piss. This has been Overturning the Tables, the podcast.
Oh, ain't hazy.